From openly shooting the rivals,
And you can see the moments right here. A fight breaks out, and he just thinks it's just a fight. But then when those gunshot rings out, that is when things get scary.
to the law enforcement going on with mass arrests.
Any occupants of the Mongols clubhouse, this is a search warrant. Come out with your hands up.
These are the 15 most dangerous Mongols in history. Christopher Stoney Ablett, September 2, 2008, Mission District, San Francisco. A Modesto Mongol walked into a bar wearing his full patch vest in the heart of Hell's Angels territory. He carried a foot-long military knife and a .357 Magnum revolver. He wasn't there to drink. Mark Guardado, the 46-year-old president of the San Francisco Hell's Angels chapter, heard about the disrespect. A Mongol, wearing full colors, in his bar, in his neighborhood. Guardado, known as Papa to his brothers, wasn't the type to let that slide. He went outside to confront whoever had the audacity to walk into Hell's Angels territory wearing enemy colors. The Mongol was waiting. What happened next lasted less than 5 minutes. When it was over, the president of one of the oldest Hell's Angels chapters in the country lay dead on the pavement at 24th Street and Treat Avenue. Stabbed 4 times, shot twice, and the man who killed him had already disappeared into the night. Christopher Brian Ablett, age 39, known as Stoney among the Mongols, didn't stick around. Within hours, his phone lit up with calls to other Mongol members. Dozens of them. Authorities would later piece together the frenzy of communication, but by then, Ablett was already gone. An arrest warrant went out with a bond set at $5 million. Law enforcement agencies across California launched a manhunt. For over a month, nothing. No sightings, no tips, no arrests. It was as if he had vanished completely. Federal authorities began to wonder if the Mongols had smuggled him out of the country or if he was hiding in one of their clubhouses under protection. Then, something strange happened. October 4th, 2008, Bartlesville, Oklahoma, over 1,600 miles from San Francisco. Surveillance cameras at the local police station captured a man walking through the front doors and turning himself in. Christopher Ablett had been on the run for 32 days. He could have stayed hidden longer. The Mongols had resources, connections, and safe houses across the country. But he surrendered. The question prosecutors would later ask was simple. Why? The answer wouldn't come until the trial, nearly 4 years later. On February 23, 2012, a federal jury in San Francisco heard Ablett's story. His attorneys laid out 3 possible defenses. Self-defense. He was protecting his friends. He acted in the heat of passion after being provoked. Any one of them, if believed, could have reduced the charges. The jury heard the evidence. They deliberated. And they rejected everything. Guilty. Murder in aid of racketeering. Assault with a deadly weapon. Multiple firearm charges. But the most damning finding came in the jury's determination of motive. Ablett didn't kill Mark Guardado because he felt threatened. He didn't kill him to protect anyone. He killed him specifically to boost his position within the Mongols motorcycle club. The entire confrontation was premeditated. Ablett had traveled from Modesto with weapons. He wore his full patch, vest into enemy territory, knowing exactly what would happen. He waited for Guardado to come outside. And when the Hells Angels president confronted him, Ablett executed him with brutal efficiency. The phone calls after the murder weren't panic DC. They were celebrating. Ablett was reporting his victory to the club, May 15, 2012. The sentence came down. 3 life sentences, 2 concurrent, 1 consecutive. Life without the possibility of parole. Christopher Ablett would never leave federal prison. But the story didn't end there. Federal prosecutors revealed something that made the case even more significant. The jury found that the Mongols Motorcycle Club engaged in racketeering activity as an organization. Members were encouraged to commit acts of violence to maintain the club's reputation. Ablett's murder of Guardado wasn't some rogue action by a member acting alone. It was part of how the Mongols operated. Kill a rival, boost your status, earn respect within the club. The Mongols celebrated Ablett as a warrior. The federal government saw a criminal enterprise. and Ablett himself became Exhibit A in a racketeering case that would eventually threaten the Mongols' very existence. The man who thought killing a Hells Angels president would make him a legend, Christopher Ablett, sits in a federal supermax facility today. Multiple appeals filed, all denied. He will die in prison. The price of gang glory isn't just high, it's permanent. Roger Pinney. April 27, 2002. Harrah's Casino, Laughlin, Nevada. The annual Laughlin River Run had drawn over 80,000 motorcycle enthusiasts to the small desert town. The Hells Angels stayed at the Flamingo Hilton. The Mongols claimed Harrah's as their territory. For 2 days, tensions had been building. Small confrontations, stare-downs. Mongols deliberately bumping into Hells Angels at the Golden Nugget Casino. Police warned both clubs to keep the peace. Both clubs ignored the warnings. At 2:16 a.m., security cameras inside Harrah's captured the moment everything exploded. Raymond Folks, a Hells Angels sergeant-at-arms from Sonoma County, kicked a Mongol in the chest. Within seconds, approximately 60 to 70 bikers were fighting on the casino floor. Guns, knives, hammers, wrenches. Witnesses dove under blackjack tables as shell casings hit the floor around them. Dealers screamed, gamblers ran for exits. The brawl lasted minutes, but when it was over, 3 men were dead. 1 Mongol was stabbed to death. 2 Hells Angels were shot and killed. At least a dozen others were hospitalized. Police found 6 guns, 50 knives, 2 hammers, 2 wrenches, and 6 flashlights abandoned inside the casino. Outside, they recovered 3 more guns, 15 knives, and 3 flashlights. Over 500 people were interviewed. Surveillance tapes clearly showed what happened. The question wasn't who was involved. The question was who would face charges. Roger Pinney was more than just another Mongol caught in the brawl. He was a former president of the club, high-ranking member with years of experience in the organization. When police began making arrests, his name appeared on the list. But the charges against him seemed almost anticlimactic compared to the violence that had unfolded. Conspiracy to commit battery or provoke a breach of peace, not murder, not attempted murder. Conspiracy, the prosecution's case was straightforward. Intelligence reports indicated the Mongols had intended to bolster their status by attacking members of the Hells Angels. Pinney, as a former president, would have been aware of these plans. He would have known tensions were escalating. He would have known what was likely to happen when dozens of Mongols and Hells Angels ended up in the same casino at 2 a.m. And according to prosecutors, he was part of the conspiracy that led to the violence. Pinney took a deal. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit battery or provoke a breach of peace. The sentence came down lighter than anyone expected. 1 year of probation. No prison time, no jail time. Just probation. But here's what made the outcome so unusual. While Pinney walked away with probation, others involved in the Laughlin brawl faced far harsher consequences. Alexander Alcantar pleaded guilty to 2 counts of voluntary manslaughter and received 18 to 45 months. Benjamin Leyva got 12 to 30 months for hitting someone in the head with a bottle. Pedro Martinez received 2 to 5 years for battery with a deadly weapon. Even Calvin Schaefer, a Hells Angel seen on video firing a gun, received 51 months in federal prison. Roger Pinney, a former Mongols president involved in a conspiracy that led to 3 deaths, got probation. The disparity raised questions. Did Pinney cooperate with authorities? Did he provide information about the club in exchange for leniency? The court records don't explicitly say, but the sentence speaks for itself. In a case where people died and dozens were arrested, the former president of one of the most violent motorcycle clubs in America walked away with the lightest possible punishment. The Laughlin River Run riot changed everything. Harrah's later lost a lawsuit claiming the casino knew about tensions between the clubs and failed to provide adequate security. The event became heavily policed in subsequent years, with restrictions on wearing club colors in certain venues. And Roger Pinney became a cautionary tale about the blurred lines between gang loyalty and self-preservation. Sometimes the smartest move isn't fighting, It's knowing when to take the deal. 13. J.D. Thacker. It was August 2018, and a man named Jim David Thacker was sitting in a Sydney immigration detention center waiting to be deported back to New Zealand. He was just 28 years old, but he had already accomplished something most bikers never do. He was the founding president of the Bandidos Binley chapter in Queensland, Australia. And now he was about to lose everything because of a crime that happened 5 years earlier. Back in 2013, 60 bandidos had brawled with rival Finks gang members in a Gold Coast restaurant precinct. Thacker was there that night, caught on CCTV walking through the chaos. He wasn't throwing punches or making threats. He was just standing in the crowd. A magistrate called him a petty narcissist and handed him 150 hours of community service. That was it. A slap on the wrist for being in the wrong place. But Australia didn't forget. By 2018, Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton was using sweeping, bad character powers to deport foreign-born bikers. Thacker's gang links made him a target, and now he was being sent back to New Zealand, back to his hometown of Puke, where his parents ran successful family businesses. He had every reason to go straight, every opportunity to start fresh. Instead, he made a different choice. In 2019, Thacker established the first New Zealand chapter of the Mongols motorcycle club in the Bay of Plenty. He recruited deportees from his old Bandidos crew and patched over former Hells Angels members in Christchurch. Within months, he had built a national network spanning Auckland, Hawke's Bay, and Christchurch. They called him El Presidente, but New Zealand already had established gangs controlling the streets. The Greasy Dogs, the Mongrel Mob, the Tribesmen, the King Cobras had been running things for decades, and they weren't about to let some Australian deportee walk in and take over. Tauranga became a battleground. In May 2020, Thacker allegedly held a Greasy Dogs member at knife point and stripped him of his gang colors. Days later, police stopped Thacker heading toward Greasy Dogs territory and found a loaded pistol in his car. At another Mongols property, they discovered a homemade nail bomb. Someone torched Thacker's barbershop, a place called Bladed and Faded. The Mongols responded by firing 96 rounds at a mongrel mob house in Maungatapu. And when police arrived, they discovered that children had been inside during the attack. The violence kept escalating. But what police didn't realize yet was that the shootings and beatings were just the surface. Underneath it all, Thacker was building something much bigger. A national methamphetamine distribution network that stretched from Auckland in the north to Christchurch in the south. His crew would collect 1 to 4 kilogram blocks of raw meth from Auckland suppliers, cut it with substances like joint pain supplements in Puke, then transport it down to the South Island. His Christchurch president, a man named Jason Ross, would hand over shoeboxes stuffed with $100,000 in cash in exchange for 2 kilograms of product. Thacker thought he was untouchable. He invested in $3,000 encrypted phones that he called Tings and assigned code names to every senior member. His own code names were Detrimental and Hellbound. Whenever paranoia crept in, he would smash the phones and buy new ones. What he didn't know was that police had already gotten inside. They had obtained special warrants to plant listening devices throughout his home, and covert cameras were recording his movements. They had intercepted his communications. And, most damaging of all, they had turned one of his own men into a Crown witness. The informant's code name was Wheelman. On June 23, 2020, police launched Operation Silk, simultaneous raids. Hit Mongols' properties across New Zealand, and 24 members were arrested in a single day. Police seized 8 firearms, including 2 AK-47s, recovered 20 kilograms of methamphetamine, and up to 28 ounces of cocaine. At Thacker's house in Puke, they found 801 grams of cocaine hidden in the roof, along with Molotov cocktails ready to be deployed. Everything needed for war, and all of it traced back to El Presidente. Thacker was charged with 53 criminal offenses, and the entire senior hierarchy of the Mongols went down with him. The trial lasted 11 weeks at the High Court in Hamilton, making it one of the biggest criminal proceedings in recent New Zealand history. Thacker's lawyer argued that the Crown's star witness couldn't be trusted, and he pointed out that video footage showed Thacker snorting a line of cocaine, but claimed that personal use didn't prove he was running a distribution network. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on 40 charges. On August 18, 2023, Thacker stood in the glass dock at the High Court in Hamilton as Justice Harlan delivered his sentence. 22 years and 4 months in prison, with a minimum of 10 years before he could even apply for parole. As guards prepared to lead him away, Thacker clung to his family's hands through the dock while his relatives held up a baby so he could see the child one last time. Then, he was gone. She reminded the court that Thacker could have embraced his family's support after deportation. Instead, he chose to establish a violent gang and build a drug empire that terrorized communities across New Zealand. But the prison sentence wasn't the end of Thacker's punishment. From the moment of his arrest in June 2020, corrections officials placed him in solitary confinement. In October 2020, they transferred him to the Prisoners of Extreme Risk Unit at Auckland Prison in Paramaribo, New Zealand's only maximum security facility. He was placed in the same unit that houses the terrorist responsible for murdering 51 people in the 2019 Christchurch mosque attacks. For nearly 3 years, Thacker spent 22 hours a day without meaningful human contact. He had no face-to-face contact with family for 2 full years. Now his mother can visit, but she's not allowed to touch him. Thacker sued the Department of Corrections, arguing that he was being punished simply for being president of the Mongols rather than for anything he actually did in prison. The court dismissed his case, noting that Thacker had not been a model prisoner and that his own behavior had led to the restrictions. His mother told reporters that the isolation is destroying her son's mental health. 5 years earlier, Jim David Thacker was deported for standing in a crowd during a riot. Now he sits in solitary confinement next to a mass murderer, with 22 years stretching out ahead of him, locked away in a cell where the light never changes and the days all blur into one. 12. Ian Ronald Crowden. Ian Ronald Crowden knew how to hurt people. The former military sniper had been trained to kill from a distance, but as a 160-kilogram strongman competitor and president of the Brisbane West chapter of the Mongols Motorcycle Club. But on October 12, 2020, he didn't need to be there at all. It was just after midnight when Shane Bowden pulled his black BMW into the driveway of his girlfriend's home in Pimpama on the Gold Coast. He had just finished at the gym and had no idea that 2 hooded gunmen were waiting in the vacant land nearby. Before Bowden could even open his car door, they rushed out and opened fire. 21 bullets ripped through the BMW and into his body. His partner and 2 children were inside the house. When police arrived, they found Bowden dead in the driver's seat with the engine still running. So who was Shane Bowden, and why did he have to die? Bowden was a former Mongols member who had been kicked out of the Victorian chapter for bashing another member. That alone was bad enough, but then he made it worse by joining the Finks, one of the Mongols' biggest rivals. In July 2020, someone shot him in the leg during a Melbourne drive-by. He survived and fled to Queensland to recover, thinking he was safe. He wasn't. The Mongols had been tracking him for weeks. 3 weeks before the execution, someone attached a GPS tracker to Bowden's BMW. When the tracker fell off, they came back a week later and installed another one. DNA on the SIM card matched Mongols members. They knew exactly where he was, every minute of every day, and when the moment was right, they struck. This had all the hallmarks of a military operation, and police believed they knew exactly who planned it. Crowden recruited members like disciples, demanded total obedience, and made examples of anyone who stepped out of line. 9 months after the execution, police descended on Crowden's home in Chuar and arrested him on murder charges. Detective Superintendent Brendan Smith made it clear. Crowden wasn't the trigger man. He was something far more important. Police alleged he had counseled, directed, and financed the entire operation, coordinating a 10-man murder plot from behind the scenes. 9 other Mongols members were arrested in the following days, but Crowden was the prize. His lawyer said Crowden was bewildered and would contest the charge. But he had bigger problems waiting. Police had already built a separate case against him for what the court called an array of criminality, dating back to 2014. In May 2022, Crowden stood before Justice David Bottis in Brisbane Supreme Court and pleaded guilty to 14 charges including extortion, drug trafficking, assault, and participating in a criminal organization. He was sentenced to 11 years with a serious violent offender declaration, meaning he would have to serve 80% before becoming eligible for parole. Three months later, he was back in court for a separate gym extortion case and received an additional 2 years. But all of that assumed the Shane Bowden murder charge wouldn't stick. As of 2024, Crowden and 8 co-defendants were still awaiting their committal hearing scheduled for February 2025. CCTV had captured Bowden's final moments. The 2 gunmen emerging from the shadows, the 21 shots, and the silver Commodore speeding away into the night. The former military sniper turned Bicky boss now sits in a Queensland prison cell serving 13 years. But the murder charge looms largest. Police allege he orchestrated the execution of Shane Bowden with the precision he learned in the military. If convicted, the conductor faces life in prison on top of the 13 years he's already serving. 11 Scott Jr. Erickson, San Diego. A 20-year-old walked into the Dago chapter of the Mongols motorcycle club and became the youngest member they had ever patched in. The club gave him a nickname that would stick for the next 4 decades, Junior. What they didn't know was that this kid would eventually lead the entire organization, serve 2 terms as national president, and become one of the most recognized figures in outlaw biker history. But first, he had to prove himself. And in the world of the Mongols, proof came through violence. January 17, 1982. Horseshoe Tavern, San Diego County. The Mongols and Hells Angels were at war over control of Southern California. On this night, 5 Mongols walked into the bar looking for Raymond Piltz, a Hells Angels sergeant-at-arms known as Fat Ray. They found him. The attack was brutal. The Mongols struck Piltz with a table, knocking him down. Then someone pulled a gun and shot him. Fat Ray died from his wounds. The killing would later be described as the first retaliation in the well-known war between the Mongols and Hells Angels. Junior was one of the 5 Mongols involved. Murder charges. The evidence was strong. Witnesses placed him at the scene. But his attorney found an angle. The charge was reduced to involuntary manslaughter. Junior took a plea deal, 4 years in state prison. For a 22-year-old Mongol, 4 years was a badge of honor. He had killed a Hells Angel. He had done time for the club. And when he walked out of prison, the Mongols remembered. Junior was 28 years old when the Mongols elected him national president, the youngest president in the club's history. Under his leadership, the club established new chapters, recruited aggressively, and solidified its position as one of the Big 5 outlaw motorcycle gangs in America. He served from 1988 to 1989, then stepped down. Junior was elected national president again. His second term lasted until 1998. During his years in leadership, Junior became a member of 7 different Mongols chapters and founded 3 new ones himself. He held every office obtainable in the club. There wasn't a position in the Mongols' hierarchy that Junior hadn't occupied. But his second term ended abruptly. Junior was convicted of assault with a deadly weapon. The details were never made fully public, but the consequences were severe. Junior was an ex-felon. The 1982 manslaughter conviction meant this new charge counted as his second strike under California's 3 strikes law. The judge handed down 14 years in state prison. Junior went from running the Mongols to sitting in Los Angeles County Jail, which he would later describe as the closest place to hell on earth. I was in California State Prison for over a decade. The national president is locked away. What happened next was unusual. Junior decided to tell his own story. He wrote The Unknown Mongol, detailing his 30 years in the club. The rise from a 20-year-old prospect to national president. The violence, the loyalty, the brotherhood. The book sold well enough that Junior wrote a sequel, The Unknown Mongol 2, focused on his prison experience. Junior also appeared on National Geographic's Outlaw Bikers, Masters of Mayhem, offering rare insight from someone who had lived at the highest levels of the organization. Most Mongols stay silent about club business. Junior talked openly, though carefully. He became one of the most public faces the Mongols had ever had. When Junior was released from prison, he remained connected to the club. Currently a member of 3 chapters simultaneously, retired from active leadership but still in good standing. Over 30 years as a Mongol, 2 terms as national president, founder of 3 chapters, author of 2 books, television personality. Scott Jr. Erickson proved something few outlaws ever manage. You can kill for the club, serve time for the club, lead the club, write about the club, and still walk away in good standing. His story is the blueprint for how to rise through the ranks of an outlaw motorcycle gang and survive long enough to tell the tale. Most Mongols who reached his level of violence and leadership either died, went to prison for life, or cooperated with law enforcement. Junior did none of those things. He's still here, still a Mongol, still respected, and still one of the most dangerous men the club ever produced. Not because of what he might do now, but because of what he already did and got away with. 10. Joel Aldridge. Stephanie Bradley was a young mother. The Clarksville Mongols believed she had stolen from them. Narcotics, money, guns. Exactly what she took remains unclear, but what is certain is that she spoke negatively about the club. May 22, 2015. The Mongols made their decision. Stephanie Bradley had to die. James Wesley Frazier drove her to Kingens Brandon Cemetery in Stewart County, Tennessee. A remote location, no witnesses, just gravestones and silence. What happened next was methodical. Jacob Ort shot Bradley approximately 8 times, but the Mongols weren't satisfied that she was dead. They needed to be sure. Joel Aldridge, known among the Clarksville Mongols as Sleazy or Spoon, received the order. Put one more bullet in her head. Make certain she's gone. Aldridge walked up to Stephanie Bradley's body and fired a single shot directly into her skull. Execution style. Confirmation that the Mongols' problem had been permanently solved. The body wasn't discovered for over a year. By the time law enforcement found Stephanie Bradley's remains, the Clarksville Mongols had moved on to other business. But federal investigators hadn't forgotten. They were building a case. Wiretaps, surveillance, informants. The evidence against the Clarksville chapter was mounting. When the 54-count superseding indictment came down in January 2018, Joel Aldridge's name appeared among the defendants. The charges were extensive: racketeering conspiracy, kidnapping, kidnapping in aid of racketeering, murder in aid of racketeering. The federal government was seeking to dismantle the entire Clarksville Mongols operation, and Aldridge's execution of Bradley was exhibit for how the club operated. The trial lasted 35 days, spread over 3.5 months. Nearly 100 witnesses testified. Prosecutors presented over 1,200 documents. The evidence painted a picture of a violent criminal organization that used murder, kidnapping, and intimidation to maintain control and silence anyone who threatened the club. February 2025, the jury returned guilty verdicts against 6 Clarksville Mongols members. Joel Aldridge was convicted on multiple counts, including his role in Bradley's murder. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Witness testimony placed him at the cemetery. His own statements to other club members confirmed what he had done, and the single bullet he fired into Stephanie Bradley's head became the defining moment of his criminal case. April 2024. Sentencing day arrived for the Clarksville Mongols. Joel Aldridge, age 43, stood before the judge as prosecutors detailed his crimes. He wasn't the one who shot Bradley 8 times. He wasn't the one who kidnapped her, but he was the one who ensured she was dead. The final shot, the confirmation kill, the execution. The judge handed down 25 years in federal prison. Here's what makes Aldridge's sentence revealing. James Wesley Frazier, who orchestrated Bradley's kidnapping and murder, received life plus 30 years. He was the ringleader, the planner, the one who drove her to her death. Aldridge was following orders. He fired 1 shot on instruction from Frazier, yet he still received a quarter-century behind bars. The message from federal prosecutors was clear. Following orders doesn't absolve you of murder. Firing 1 bullet versus 8 doesn't make you less guilty. And executing someone who was already dying doesn't reduce your culpability. Joel Aldridge pulled the trigger. Stephanie Bradley died. Those two facts were enough to guarantee he would spend the majority of his remaining life in federal prison. Number 9. Joshua Ryan Herbert, May 21, 2017, Shell gas station, Riverside, California, just off the 91 freeway. 10:30 p.m., 5 Hells Angels pulled in to refuel their motorcycles. They were wearing full colors, riding through Southern California on club business. What they didn't know was that someone had been waiting for this exact moment. A gray Nissan Versa pulled into the gas station. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out holding a .357 revolver. He didn't say a word. He just started firing. James Duty, age 31, known as Floppy to his brothers, was struck multiple times. Another Hells Angel felt a bullet graze his helmet, but the shot deflected, and he wasn't injured. By the time the Angels realized what was happening, the shooter was back in the car and the Versa was speeding toward the freeway. Duty was rushed to a hospital. He died a short time later. The Riverside Police Department launched a multi-agency investigation. They had surveillance footage. They had witnesses. And they had a problem. The shooting appeared to be gang-related, part of an escalating feud between the Mongols and Hells Angels that had been intensifying for 6 to 8 months across Orange and Los Angeles counties. But identifying the shooter would take time. 1 month later, on June 21, 2017, police executed search warrants across Southern California, Anaheim, Cathedral City, Corona, Garden Grove, Huntington Beach, Riverside. At a residence on Monterey Peninsula Drive in Corona, they arrested Joshua Ryan Herbert, age 27, without incident. Inside his home, investigators found the murder weapon, a loaded .357 revolver, ammunition, body armor, multiple firearms, gang paraphernalia, and extensive Mongol tattoos on Herbert's body that told a story about his membership in one of the most violent motorcycle clubs in America. Herbert was charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and special circumstances that made him eligible for the death penalty. The prosecution alleged he committed the crimes to benefit a criminal street gang. Herbert had no prior felony convictions in Riverside County. This was his first major arrest, and he was looking at spending the rest of his life in prison. July 20th, 2017. Herbert pleaded not guilty. His defense would argue that he wasn't even an active member of the Mongols at the time of the shooting. He claimed he was out bad, meaning expelled from the club. His attorney would tell the jury that Herbert's motive was personal, not gang-related. The shooting had nothing to do with furthering the Mongols' activities. The trial told a different story. Prosecutors presented surveillance stills of the gray Nissan Versa at the gas station. Cell tower pings placed Herbert near the scene at the exact time of the shooting. The .357 revolver recovered from his home was matched to the bullets that killed James Duty. Gang experts testified about the decades-long rivalry between the Mongols and Hells Angels, about how Mongol members earned respect through violence against rivals, about territory, retaliation, and intimidation. But the most damaging evidence came from Herbert's own words. After the shooting, he made admissions to his former girlfriend, statements that prosecutors used to paint a picture of a Mongol who opened fire on unarmed Hells Angels to prove his loyalty to the club and boost his standing within the organization. Herbert's defense fell apart under scrutiny. His claim that he was expelled from the Mongols didn't hold up. The tattoos covering his body told a different story. The phone contacts he made to Mongols members the night of the shooting told a different story. His conduct before and after the murder told a different story. The jury didn't believe he was out badly. They believed he was an active participant in a criminal street gang who murdered a rival to further the gang's activities. The verdict came back guilty. First-degree murder, attempted murder. The jury found true a gang murder special circumstance under California Penal Code Section 190.2a, 22, and gang enhancements under Section 186.22b, 1. Joshua Herbert was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the case didn't end there. Herbert appealed. His attorneys argued two main points. First, there wasn't sufficient evidence that he was an active participant in the Mongols at the time of the shooting or that the murder furthered gang activities. Second, New legislation called Assembly Bill 333 had changed the legal definitions of gang enhancements and should apply retroactively to his case. The Court of Appeal reviewed the evidence. Herbert's Mongol tattoos, the paraphernalia in his home, his admissions about the shooting, his phone contacts with club members, his targeting of rival Hells Angels, who were unarmed and simply refueling their motorcycles. The court found substantial evidence supported his active participation in the Mongols. The jury was right to reject his claim that he had been expelled. As for whether the murder furthered gang activities, the court was equally clear. The shooting was unprovoked. It targeted rivals. Herbert boasted about it afterward. Gang experts testified that violence against the Hells Angels served multiple purposes for the Mongols: retaliation for past conflicts, intimidation to maintain territory, and demonstration of power. Herbert's argument that his motive was personal to regain standing in the club didn't help him. Personal motive and gang benefit aren't mutually exclusive. He could want to boost his own reputation and further the gang's goals at the same time. But then came the twist. Assembly Bill 333, which took effect after Herbert's trial, narrowed the legal definitions of gang enhancements and special circumstances. The Court of Appeal ruled that AB 333 applied retroactively. The gang findings that had been used to enhance Herbert's sentence and trigger the special circumstance were based on the old legal standards. Under the new standards, those findings would need to be retried. The court vacated and struck the gang enhancements and the special circumstance finding. Herbert's murder and attempted murder convictions were affirmed, but the allegations that made him eligible for life without parole would have to be proven again under the amended law. Joshua Herbert remains in prison today. His convictions stand. The question of whether prosecutors can prove the gang allegations under the new legal standards is still pending, but one thing is certain: James Floppy Duty died, and Joshua Herbert will spend the rest of his life answering for what he did that night, whether the gang enhancements ultimately stand or not. 8. Clinton Neil Walker. Clinton Neil Walker wasn't your typical outlaw biker. He was a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who earned a Bronze Star, a Hillsborough County firefighter and paramedic who received a Medal of Valor, a decorated professional who saved lives. And he was also a high-ranking member of one of the most dangerous motorcycle clubs in America. For years, Walker lived two lives. By day, he saved people. By night, he rode with the Outlaws. Walker joined the Outlaws around 2008 after being recruited by his own fire captain, James Costa, president of the Outlaws St. Petersburg chapter. Walker rose through the ranks, eventually becoming vice president of the Hillsborough County chapter. Fire Rescue Management has known about their membership since 2008. For nearly a decade, the county looked the other way. Then came September 2016, Key West. A woman got into an argument with several men wearing Outlaws logos at the Rumor Lounge. The bikers told bar manager John Mafera to escort her out. Mafera refused. Approximately 15 outlaws attacked him and another employee. Surveillance cameras captured everything. Walker was identified in a photo lineup. He was arrested, negotiated a plea deal, and received a 30-day paid suspension. 2 months later, the county banned employees from membership in any gang listed in the FBI's National Gang Report. Walker claimed he resigned from the Outlaws in October 2016, right before the ban took effect. July 2017, Walker's phone rang. James Costa had been shot by the rival 69ers while riding his motorcycle. Walker wasn't on duty, but he dressed in his fire rescue uniform and rushed to the hospital carrying Costa's motorcycle vest with Outlaws insignia. When law enforcement asked for the vest as evidence, Walker initially refused. The optics were devastating. A county firefighter in uniform is protecting gang evidence. An internal investigation concluded Walker had unwavering loyalty to the Outlaws and conducted himself in a manner detrimental to the department. By February 2018, Walker was fired. But Walker wasn't done with motorcycle clubs. Before leaving the Outlaws, he had helped negotiate a deal to allow a larger Mongol and pagan presence in Florida. A summit was held in the Florida Keys in September 2016. Shortly after, Walker joined the Mongols, establishing a chapter in Miami before returning to Tampa to lead the Mongols in Hillsborough County. March 8, 2025. Racetrack gas station, New Smyrna Beach. Bike Week. A group of warlocks was gathered when Mongols arrived. They came quickly and with purpose. Walker was driving a Chevy Silverado. What happened next involved 25 people or more. Punches flew, then gunfire erupted. 12 to 15 shots rang out. Surveillance video captured a bald man brandishing and firing a gun. Witnesses identified Walker. 2 warlocks were injured. Marvin Granick had a bullet graze his head. Thomas McDaniel was struck with nunchucks. Another Mongol showed up at a hospital with a gunshot wound to the stomach. Walker was arrested and charged with inciting a riot, discharging a firearm in public, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He posted $75,000 bail, but his troubles were just beginning. October 16, 2025. Bradenton. A driver cut through the grass at a residential property to avoid construction. A man walked out, yelled at the driver, then opened the car door and punched the driver 3 times in the face. He drove away in a black Corvette with a Buccaneers plate. The victim identified Clinton Walker from a photo lineup. A Manatee County judge issued an arrest warrant for burglary with battery in a conveyance, a first-degree felony punishable by up to life in prison. Prosecutors filed to revoke Walker's bond. On November 10, 2025, Walker was arrested again. July 2, 2025. Operation Mongolian Beef swept through Florida. Dozens of Mongols were arrested. Walker was among them. The evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance video showed him firing a gun during the gas station brawl. Walker entered no contest pleas to aggravated rioting and conspiracy to commit aggravated rioting. The sentence, 5 years and 2 months in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Special conditions included no contact with any outlaw motorcycle gang, surrender of all gang paraphernalia, and no possession of firearms. State Attorney R.J. Larissa called it a brazen act of violence that by the grace of God did not result in a fatality. FBI Jacksonville Special Agent Jason Carley was direct. Walker was an active participant in orchestrated violence that put innocent lives at risk. Clinton Neal Walker sits in prison today. The decorated Marine, the man who saved lives before throwing it all away for outlaw motorcycle clubs. 5 years and 2 months in prison. 5 years of probation after that, and a lifetime ban from the only brotherhood he truly committed to. The price of unwavering loyalty. Verse 7. Gregory Lawrence Moore Jr., July 11, 2020. Jake's Roadhouse, Arvada, Colorado. Ryan McPherson, lead singer for the classic rock band Nightwolf, was performing one of the band's first gigs since COVID shut everything down. He had just finished the first set when patrons began noticing a commotion outside. "Man, there's something going on out there," a witness recalled. "It sounded like gunshots." Many patrons walked to a side patio. McPherson walked out the front door. Members of the Mongols and Hells Angels were engaged in a block-long shootout along North Lamar Street. The fight had spilled into the street and escalated into chaos. A man lay in the street next to a fallen motorcycle crying out for help. He had been shot. McPherson walked toward him. Then someone beat him in the back of the head with a helmet. A motorcycle ran him over. He suffered a traumatic brain injury and was placed in a medically induced coma. The injuries would be permanent. William Kelly Henderson, a 43-year-old ranking Hells Angels member, was shot to death during the melee. 2 other Hells Angels suffered multiple gunshot wounds. Later that day, 2 innocent motorcyclists riding nearby were run off the road by Mongol members and seriously injured. They had no gang affiliation. They were collateral damage. Arvada police launched an 118-month investigation involving law enforcement agencies across multiple states. Detectives worked through witness statements, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence. The Mongols and Hells Angels had engaged in orchestrated violence with complete disregard for innocent lives. Among the Mongols involved was Gregory Lawrence Moore Jr., age 28. As police built their case, Moore fled to Florida and hid in a Mongols clubhouse in Tampa. Finally, on January 26, 2022, police tracked Moore to 3213 North 29th Street in Tampa, the Mongols clubhouse. Moore had been regularly seen at the location in a 2014 Ford Fusion owned by another Mongol. His phone pinged to the same address. Tampa police executed a search warrant as part of a massive multi-state operation and arrested Moore without incident. 10 Mongol members were apprehended simultaneously across Colorado, California, Utah, and Florida. All were extradited to Colorado. Moore faced first-degree murder, 6 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of organized crime, 6 counts of first-degree assault, and 3 counts of vehicular assault. The evidence was overwhelming. He faced life in prison, April 5, 2024. Nearly 4 years after the shooting, Moore pleaded guilty to violating the Colorado Organized Crime Control Act. He had to admit the Mongols were a criminal enterprise engaging in organized criminal racketeering activity and that he was part of it. Prosecutors dismissed 35 other charges, including first-degree murder. The sentence, 27 years in the Colorado Department of Corrections. The investigation dismantled the Mongols Colorado operation. Search warrants were executed at clubhouses in Arvada, California, Utah, and Tampa. 9 Mongols convicted. The organization abandoned its Arvada clubhouse and relocated to Denver. Arvada Police Chief Ed Brady called it pure evil. FBI Special Agent David Booth said the arrests proved law enforcement would pursue gang violence no matter how long it took. Ryan McPherson survived with permanent damage. The musician who tried to help a stranger was beaten and run over for doing the right thing. William Kelly Henderson didn't make it home. 2 innocent motorcyclists were run off the road, all because 2 gangs waged war in public. Gregory Lawrence Moore Jr. sits in a Colorado prison serving 27 years. He fled to Florida. He hid in a Mongols clubhouse. But when prosecutors gave him the choice between admitting the Mongols were a criminal enterprise or facing life for murder, Moore chose self-preservation. He took the deal, and now he's paying the price for a... Six, Jared Chadwick. Chadwick lived in Aurora and had attended Layton High School in Utah. His criminal record showed no felony convictions. 3 Class A misdemeanors scattered across a decade. Theft by receiving stolen property in Ogden in 2004, assault in Layton in 2005, communications fraud in Farmington in 2007. By July 2020, he was a full Mongols member. And on the night his brothers turned Arvada into a war zone, Chadwick made a choice. He destroyed evidence. The exact nature of what Chadwick destroyed was never disclosed in public court documents. What prosecutors proved was tampering. In the chaotic aftermath, while William Kelly Henderson lay dead in the street, while Ryan McPherson suffered traumatic brain injury, while 2 other Hells Angels bled from gunshot wounds, while downed motorcycles and riders littered 4 blocks of Lamar Street, Chadwick took steps to hide what happened. Made it harder for investigators to piece together who did what. Witnesses feared retribution and refused to give names. The evidence Chadwick tried to destroy would eventually help convict 9 Mongols. Davis County Sheriff's deputies arrested him on January 26, 2022, at his residence, booking him into Farmington, Utah jail without bail. The arrests were coordinated across 4 states. While Chadwick sat in Utah custody, co-defendants were simultaneously picked up in Colorado, California, and Florida. Investigators executed search warrants at Mongols clubhouses in Arvada, California, Utah, and Tampa. Seized firearms, cell phones, and evidence. Chadwick faced counts 9, 10, 19, 21, and 33 from the massive complaint. While 7 brothers faced first-degree murder charges, he faced accessory to murder, aggravated robbery, racketeering, and conspiracy. But prosecutors had discovered something else. Chadwick was a convicted felon who possessed a firearm. Federal charges followed. In November 2022, Chadwick pleaded guilty to tampering with or destroying physical evidence in Jefferson County District Court. The plea eliminated his accessory to murder, aggravated robbery, racketeering, and conspiracy charges. Utah prosecutors charged him separately for being a felon in possession of a firearm. He pleaded guilty to that as well. In March 2023, Jefferson County sentenced Chadwick to 90 days in jail with credit for 90 days already served. Gregory Moore got 27 years. Leon Dennis got 24. Vincent Dominguez got 5. Daniel Goint got 8. But his federal sentence hit harder. The Utah federal court sentenced him to 28 months in federal prison for firearm possession. 5. Alfonso Big Al Acieves. 10 men gathered in Montebello, California on December 5, 1969. Vietnam veterans, Hispanic bikers rejected by the Hells Angels for the color of their skin, men who had seen combat and come home to nothing. They formed a club that would grow into one of the most violent outlaw motorcycle gangs in the world. Among those 10 founding members stood the man who would become the club's first sergeant-at-arms, a position reserved for the most brutal enforcer in any motorcycle club. His name was Alfonso Acieves. The streets knew him as Big Al. His reputation for violence would define the Mongols motorcycle club for decades. By age 15, Big Al had committed his first armed robbery. By 18, he was deep into selling drugs. He wanted to do it, had to do it. Then the Vietnam War arrived. Big Al enlisted eagerly. They were going to teach him to kill people and pay him for it. He served 2 tours with the 101st Airborne Division, Walking Point. When he found the enemy, he cut their ears off and put them in his pocket. He was nuts, and the worst part was that he didn't know he was nuts. Nearly lost his leg in the Battle of Hamburger Hill, received numerous medals, got discharged and sent home. On the plane ride home, Big Al thought maybe he'd go to college, try to change his life. That didn't happen. Nobody wanted him, not his mom, not his dad. His wife was with another man, back to drugs and crime within weeks. Several run-ins with the law followed. Prison became familiar. Guards called him job security because he always came back. Then, in 1969, Big Al and 9 friends started the Mongols Motorcycle Club. Everywhere they went, somebody would test them. They would fight. Little by little, they started growing chapters. Big Al got famous for his fighting and all the things he would do to people. People were afraid of him. His reputation grew. He would do things for other people. Collect money. Enforce. Debts. Anything as long as someone would pay him. He became a warlord. A hitman who would take any job for the right price. Big Al's violence stood out even in the brutal world of outlaw motorcycle clubs. He once whipped a guy with a chain and took half his face off. Had no idea how many people he stabbed. Countless was the word he used. Became addicted to heroin. A 35-year addiction that would consume his life. He met and married Lorraine. She had 6 kids. He told her he would take care of them. But his heroin addiction got worse. Needed money for drugs. Started taking on bigger jobs. Someone asked if he could bomb a place. He gave them a price. Lorraine worried constantly that someone would call and say he was dead. Death called on Big Al a lot. People tried to kill him. Drugs tried to kill him. He kept surviving. When the jobs and money ran out, the family needed a place to stay. Another family took them in with one stipulation. Read a scripture every day. Big Al didn't know what a scripture was, but reluctantly agreed. As he studied the Bible, his curiosity grew. Someone talked to him about salvation, asked if he wanted his sins forgiven. Big Al said, "Man, you don't know who you're talking to. The things I've done." The man told him God died on the cross for him anyway. Big Al accepted the Lord that day, but he was still hooked on heroin. Still working as a gun for hire, still committing vile acts. Turning his life around wasn't easy. He was eventually locked up for planning a bomb attack. When he got out, Lorraine and the kids picked him up at the airport. He told them they were going to church, moved into a Christian men's home. Today, decades after founding the Mongols Motorcycle Club, decades after terrorizing Southern California as the club's original sergeant-at-arms, Big Al Acieves is a changed man. Works as a chaplain for the Refuge and Recovery Chaplains Ministry. Volunteers for hospice programs and prison ministries, including those on death row. Travels across the United States and other countries, spreading a message of hope. Mentors men who want freedom from violence and drugs. His testimony was aired on the 700 Club. At charity events, he appears alongside other reformed outlaws, talking about transformation through faith. Friends say they hear compassion in his voice, a big change from the man who whipped faces off with chains and stabbed countless victims. The man who founded one of the most violent motorcycle clubs in America, alongside 9 other veterans in Montebello in 1969. The original sergeant-at-arms set the standard for brutality that Mongols would follow for 5 decades. Big Al Aksavis, the founding legend, walked away from the empire of violence he helped create. 4. Justin Mooch de Loreto. 5 months after the first chapter of the Mongols Motorcycle Club opened in Oregon, Eugene police arrested 3 members of the club on felony charges. The incident that led to their arrest was no ordinary traffic stop. It was a 90-mile high-speed pursuit during rush hour on Interstate 5 that turned into a federal case. Among those arrested was the man who had founded the Oregon chapter, a 27-year-old from Marion County, who served as the chapter's president. His name was Justin de Loreto. The streets knew him as Mooch. And what he did on April 23, 2008, would define his tenure as a Mongols leader. Mooch had come to the motorcycle club world through the anti-racist skinhead hardcore music scene. He toured the country as a guitar player and manager for the punk rock group The Escaped. Eventually, I gravitated toward motorcycle club culture, started with the Vagos MC before joining the Mongols and founding their Portland chapter, rose through the ranks to chapter president. Then, the regional representative oversees multiple states, including Oregon, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. His reputation was unmistakable. So was his loyalty. He inked the Mongols logo across the side of his shaved skull, a drawing of a brawny Genghis Khan-like figure riding a chopper while brandishing a sword. A symbol as permanent as the criminal record he was about to build. April 23, 2008. De Loreto was driving out of his rural Turner home driveway when an unmarked SUV pulled in. Eugene Police Detective Dave Burrows and Federal ATF Special Agent James Packard investigating an assault at a Eugene bar involving Mongols members. De Loreto thought they were rivals, turned around and followed them for 90 miles on Interstate 5. Summoned 2 associates, Nathan Cassidy and Matthew Weiss, who boxed in the unmarked vehicle during rush hour. Tried to run the investigators off the road. Packard and Burrows called Eugene police for assistance. All 3 Mongols were arrested. Prosecutors charged De Loreto with 8 felonies, including second-degree attempted assault and conspiracy to commit second-degree kidnapping. The prosecution argued this was a gang crime, said anyone could have been the victim had they mistakenly turned into De Loreto's driveway. Deputy District Attorney Stephen Morgan said De Loreto put numerous motorists at risk because of his gang attitudes. Gang behavior is not tolerated by this community, Morgan said in court. Defense lawyer Kelly Beckley argued his client had been outrageously overcharged, said the government was using the case to fan fears of gang activity, pointed out that Packard and Burrows could have stopped the chase instantly by identifying themselves. Detective Burrows disputed that after the hearing. Mr. De Loreto knew who we were, Burrows said. He wanted to send a message. He wanted everybody to know the Mongols are the baddest boys in the state and won't take heat from anybody. In June 2008, a Lane County jury delivered its verdict. Acquitted De Loreto of all 8 felony charges, but convicted of 5 misdemeanors, 2 counts of menacing reckless endangerment, reckless driving, and related charges. Lane County Circuit Judge Deborah Vogt sentenced him to 1 year in jail, suspended his driver's license, ordered 5 years of probation with strict conditions. He could neither associate with the Mongols nor wear their insignia. That included contact with his twin brother Jeremy, who was acting Mongols president. The judge ordered polygraph testing to ensure compliance. De Loreto had already served 2 months in jail awaiting trial. When Judge Vogt sentenced him to 1 additional year, he expected to serve it. That didn't happen. The Lane County Jail was overcrowded. Sheriff Russ Berger said county officials decided to release De Loreto after determining he was less dangerous than other inmates. His risk assessment score plunged following his misdemeanor convictions. For someone with the club's logo tattooed on the side of his head, compliance was a challenge. In September 2008, 3 months after his conviction, De Loreto violated probation, left Oregon secretly and fled to California, joined the San Diego Mongols chapter, went to work in a tattoo parlor owned by a Mongols member. Detective Burrows said there would be a warrant for his arrest. October 2008, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives executed Operation Black Rain, a massive coordinated raid targeting Mongols across multiple states. Over 1,000 heavily armed federal agents served more than 160 search warrants and 110 federal arrest warrants. They raided the San Diego tattoo parlor where De Loreto worked, detained and investigated him. Lane County learned he had violated probation by leaving the state. Oregon issued a warrant for his arrest. De Loreto had prior assault convictions from his younger years. Third-degree and fourth-degree assault in Lane County are tied to gang-related physical confrontations. The I-5 chase added to that record. The probation violations added more. He served intermittent brief jail stays while on probation for violating the no association order. But he was also pursuing something else: education. Inspired by a Mongols member who had earned a doctorate in psychology, De Loreto enrolled at George Fox University, earned a bachelor's degree in social and behavioral studies, then enrolled in the social work graduate program in 2015. That same year, he secured an unpaid internship at the Oregon Youth Authority, passed the criminal background check, began training on August 8th to work with children with gang ties at McLaren Youth Correctional Facility. The next day, Assistant Director Clint McClellan asked if he was a member of the Mongols. De Loreto confirmed he was. That night, McClellan ended his internship due to his affiliation. De Loreto filed a federal lawsuit claiming the agency violated his constitutional rights. His internship was terminated solely because of his Mongols membership, his attorney wrote. De Loreto continued his work with the Mongols for years, served as chapter president across Oregon, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana for 15 years total. Rose to regional representative, helped establish and supervise chapters, was a key figure in founding one of the largest Australian chapters, which served as a base for expansion into Asia. Watched close friends get killed in wars with the Hells Angels and Outlaws. Witnessed corruption within the gang from former leaders like Ruben Doc Cavazos. Eventually, in 2022, he left the club in bad standing. Today, De Loreto works as a social worker and mental health therapist, providing therapy to at-risk youth. Author of The Ride of My Life, From Street Gangs to Motorcycle Clubs to Social Worker. Hosts the podcast Mondays with Mooch. Appears on speaking engagements discussing his time in the outlaw motorcycle world. The Mongols logo remains tattooed on the side of his head, a permanent reminder of the 15 years he spent as a chapter president. 3. David, Little Dave Santillan, 25 years. That's how long David Santillan dedicated to the Mongols Motorcycle Club. Joined in 1997, admitted to Mother Chapter, the club's governing body, a year later. Served a year in Lompoc Federal Penitentiary for mail fraud in 2000. Came back to the club stronger, rose to national president, became the public face of the Mongols during their most intense legal battles with the federal government. In late 2018, a federal jury convicted the Mongols of racketeering and conspiracy. The trial included testimony about violent confrontations between Mongols and Hells Angels across California, bars and restaurants in Hollywood, Pasadena, Merced, La Mirada, Wilmington, Riverside. The federal government tried to seize the club's trademarked logo as part of the conviction. Santillan publicly fought against it, defended the club repeatedly. The Mongols were misunderstood, trying to change their image, presented himself as a reformer, cleaning up the club's reputation. Then in June 2021, everything collapsed. Santillan called his wife Annie. They were estranged after he had an affair. He was drunk, begging for forgiveness, promising to get sober and be a better father. Annie recorded the call without his knowledge. The conversation turned to John Ciccone, the retired ATF agent who had been the lead investigator trying to destroy the Mongols for decades. On the recording, Santillan said Ciccone told him he had 1 year before retirement. After 1 year, he's done, and he can't protect me, so we have to have an exit strategy. The words protect me and exit strategy were devastating. They suggested Ciccone had been shielding Santillan from prosecution in exchange for cooperation. Annie was furious that her husband kept cheating after the call. She wanted revenge. Sent the recording to 2 other Mongol members with a text message. You guys need to see this video. David has been working with the government this entire time. He is simply a CI. In other words, he is a rat. The video spread through the club like wildfire. December 10, 2021, Mongols attorney Joseph Yanni filed a motion for a new racketeering trial, argued their national president had been a confidential informant throughout the 2018 trial. It is hard to imagine a more egregious invasion of attorney-client privilege or a more cavalier dismissal of due process rights, the motion stated. If Santillan had been working with the government while leading the club's legal defense, the entire trial was tainted. Santillan denied everything, said he was in a really bad place when the video was recorded. Absolutely not, unequivocally no. I've never cooperated in any way, shape, or form. He explained that he and Ciccone had developed a professional rapport over 25 years. After the trial, Santillan ran into Ciccone when picking up confiscated Mongols' property. Ciccone mentioned he was retiring and told Santillan, "I know you've been doing a bang-up job at the club. Can't protect you from this point forward because my replacement might not be as nice." That's what protecting me meant. A warning about future ATF agents, not confirmation of cooperation. Annie testified in court that her husband was never an informant. Said she only sent the text because she was trying to destroy him out of anger and betrayal. I wanted him to feel what I was feeling, the shame and embarrassment. Later, she told the New York Times she felt horrible about it. Prosecutors backed Santillan. Ciccone testified under oath that Santillan was never an informant, never shared defense strategy, and never provided privileged information. Federal Judge David O. Carter heard months of testimony. In October 2022, he denied the motion for a new trial. Said the allegation has a stench to it, but no evidence supported it. Called the case horrific concerning the magnitude of murders, narcotics dealing, and the war between Hells Angels and Mongols. There are too many murders. The notion of acquittal in another trial is something this court has a very difficult time believing. The federal court cleared Santillan, but the Mongols didn't care. After the video surfaced, they threw him out, stripped his title, excommunicated him in a closed-door meeting where he couldn't defend himself. 25 years of loyalty, a year in federal prison, a decade as national president, ended by one drunken phone call, a wife's revenge, and 3 words he could never take back. Can't protect me. Little Dave Santillan, the man who fought to save the Mongols' patch, lost his own. 2. Nick, the Knife, Forbes. March 2006 at the Royal Pines Resort on the Gold Coast. A kickboxing tournament filled the ballroom with more than 1,800 people. Finks sat on one side, Hells Angels on the other. Tensions simmered over Christopher Hudson's defection from the Finks to the Angels. Then Nick Forbes threw a punch. That single punch ignited one of the wildest bicky brawls Australia has ever seen. The ballroom blitz. Shots fired, knives pulled, fists, feet, bottles, and chairs used as weapons. Hudson was shot in the back and jaw, stabbed multiple times. The chaos was captured on CCTV and made headlines around the world. Forbes, the Finks terror team enforcer, stood at the center of it all. Forbes rose to notoriety as part of the Finks terror team before members patched over to the Mongols. The melee at Royal Pines broke out when he punched Hudson. Violence erupted and spread through the ballroom. Forbes was arrested and sentenced to 27 months in prison for the violent incident. But prison didn't slow him down. January 2008, 2 years after the ballroom blitz, Forbes was arrested again for a violent rampage through Broad Beach Mall on the Gold Coast. He randomly attacked up to 6 innocent young men, punching one so hard his eye socket fractured. No provocation, no reason, just violence. Forbes was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison over the savage assaults. May 2011 at a Hindley Street nightclub in Adelaide. Forbes and other Finks members stormed the club and attacked Hells Angels members with bar stools, knives, and bottles. He was charged with rioting, which carried a maximum 10-year jail sentence. CCTV footage clearly identified him attacking another man with a bar stool. Initially acquitted, he faced a retrial in 2016 and was convicted of aggravated affray, sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. May 2019, Forbes walked free from Brisbane court after being extradited from South Australia. He told reporters at the Brisbane Watch House he was off to party. Police sources revealed he had taken over as national president of the Mongols. He's idolized by these young bickies, a police source said. Police feared his return would lead to a recruitment drive and expansion across the Gold Coast. June 2015, Forbes was arrested along with 10 Mongols members and 30 associates in an alleged $100,000 per week drug production and distribution network. The operation targeted the Mongols' Queensland operations and added drug trafficking charges to his growing record. October 2022 at Darwin Airport, Forbes was arrested on an outstanding warrant from 2015 relating to alleged aggravated assault at a Darwin nightclub in 2014. The Gold Coast-based national president had been wanted in the Northern Territory for years. Those charges were later dropped. March 2023 brought Operation Morley, an 18-month Northern Territory police investigation targeting the Mongols. 40 alleged Mongols members and associates were arrested on 140 offenses, including commercial drug supply, extortion, conspiring to pervert justice, recklessly endanger serious harm, aggravated assault, and unlawful use of motor vehicles. Police arrested Forbes at Darwin Airport in October during the gang's national run from Alice Springs to Darwin. They seized 34 firearms, $500,000 in cash, and small amounts of illicit drugs. Forbes' son Hayden followed his father's path and was charged over the execution-style murder of former Finks beakie Shane Bowden, who was shot 21 times in his driveway in October 2020. Bowden had been jailed for 6 years over the Ballroom Blitz alongside Forbes, later patched over to the Mongols in 2013, then rejoined the Finks just before his murder. Recent reports suggest serious health issues forced Forbes to step back from Mongols' leadership. But his legacy remains. The man who threw one punch that started the Ballroom Blitz. The terror team enforcer who became national president. Nick the Knife Forbes, the Australian Mongol who spent decades proving exactly how he earned his nickname. Wars Ruben Doc Cavazos, national president and architect of expansion. Ruben Cavazos earned his nickname honestly. Licensed radiologist, CAT scan technician at Southern California Medical Center. Doc to everyone who knew him, but the man who could read x-rays built something far more dangerous. He joined the Mongols after leaving the Avenue Street gang in Highland Park, Los Angeles. Rose through the ranks, became national president, then transformed the Mongols into one of the largest criminal organizations on the West Coast. Old school bikers blamed him for destroying what the club once was. The federal government blamed him for creating a murdering, drug-dealing criminal conspiracy. Before his presidency, every Mongol had to own and ride a Harley-Davidson. Doc ignored that. Recruited Hispanic street gang members from his Avenue's connections, let them bypass the prospect ritual. Join as part-time Mongols. The Mongols exploded across the West Coast. His brother Al the Suit Cavazos and his son Ruben, Lil Rubes Cavazos Jr. helped him take over, a family operation running a criminal empire. Doc's tenure was documented on camera. History Channel's Gangland Season 2 filmed Mongol Nation while he was president. "We are what everybody fears," his son Lil Rubes said on camera. Meanwhile, the ATF was planting undercover agents. For the second time, federal agents infiltrated the Mongols and became patched members. August 30th, 2008. Vernon, California. The Mongols voted Doc out. The majority believed he was stealing and provoking a war with the Mexican mafia. His son and brother were kicked out with him. Rumors circulated that Doc was a rat. October 21st, 2008. Operation Black Rain. The ATF executed 110 arrest warrants across 5 states, served over 160 search warrants, 79 Mongols charged in federal court. America's Most Wanted filmed the arrests. Police raided Doc's 2,760 square foot home in South Hills, West Covina. Seized guns and bulletproof vests. The 177-page indictment detailed murder, torture, drug trafficking, credit card fraud. Doc at the center handing out orders. Brokering deals with the Mexican mafia. January 23, 2009. 3 months after arrest, Doc became the first Mongol to plead guilty to racketeering conspiracy. Maximum life sentence. He admitted he led a murdering, drug-dealing criminal conspiracy called the Mongols Motorcycle Club. Admitted the Mongols' trademarks afforded influence over the RICO enterprise he established and controlled. Agreed to forfeit all rights to the Mongols' trademarks. The patches, the logo, everything. September 8, 2011. Federal District Judge Otis D. Wright-Thekun sentenced Doc in a secret, in-camera hearing. Closed court session. Highly unusual. Legal experts questioned the secrecy. Only after repeated prodding by the Associated Press did prosecutors reveal his sentence. 14 years in federal prison. His son Lil Rubes got 51 months during the same secret proceeding. Doc later claimed ATF agent John Ciccone threatened to hang his son if he refused to cooperate. Said he was intimidated into signing the plea. Ruben Doc Cavazos flipped on January 23rd. He seems to have gone quickly and easily. September 16, 2015. Federal District Judge David O. Carter ruled the government couldn't seize the Mongols' name and patch on constitutional grounds. Doc's forfeiture hadn't worked, but his legacy remained. He transformed a motorcycle club into a criminal empire. Published his autobiography Honor Few, Fear None in 2008, just before his arrest. Got caught, pleaded, guilty in secret. Did 14 years. And left behind the question that haunts him still. Was Doc Cavazos a rat who cooperated, or a father who made a deal to protect his son? From Big Al's founding brutality to Doc Cavazos' secret plea deal, these 15 Mongols proved why the club remains one of America's most dangerous criminal organizations. Some got life, some walked free, but all of them paid a price for wearing the patch. Hit subscribe for more deep dives into the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, and drop a comment telling us which case you want covered next. But what happens when a brotherhood built on loyalty turns into a criminal empire run by men who will kill their own? Click the next video to find out.